and it is controversial, the fact that when I was being raised, my neighbor could snatch me by my ear, tell me what I needed to know because I'm going down the wrong direction, whereas now the neighbor won't dare grab you by the ear. They close the door and shut themselves off, as opposed to being the village to raise the child.
I think it's affected. I think it's affected every system. We've had to answer to all the problems that have been created. You know, Dr. Spock. I think he did society a disservice, and we bought into it. We gave our children rights that I basically don't think children have. I only think the children have the right to do as they're taught to do, as they're instructed. And parents have the right to instruct the children in the best way that they can. I've had interruptions in my relationships with friends over this spanking issue. Nobody believes in mistreating a child, but I certainly believe in discipline.
Yes.
And we're lacking that. There's no consequences. And our kids are basically aren't afraid of anything.
Yes.
They're basically not afraid of anything. They're not intimidated by anything. And with that, you'll have less respect. You'll have less cooperation. You'll have less attention. We've got a lot of problems that we give medical terms to. And now we want to give drugs to things that a nice little whack on the butt in the early years would perhaps have taken care of.
You know, and even in that, if the community, the lack of respect of understanding what you're building, the lack of putting forth the kinds of funds that are needed to make the SAPA program work, where do we address that, and how?
Well, here we have a cultural thing also. As far as the African American community, until we start looking at contributing to our community, to supporting our community, until we start redefining how we're going to relate to each other, we're going to suffer the same social problems continually down through the years. There are a lot of things that we need to pick up in the African American community. Volunteerism.
Yes.
Adopting our children. Supporting our churches. Supporting our businesses. All of these things. And we realize it. We recognize the problems. Now, the difference is we need to keep the conversation at the dinner table.
Yes.
We need to continue to talk about these things and try to figure out how to make our community better.
Yes.
Now, we have to take responsibility for this. We have to take responsibility for the lack of our students excelling in schools. We look at one or two outstanding kids and say, hey, look at these kids, that's all right. But we don't look at the 90% that are operating under the acceptable level, or the 50%, whatever it is. Generally, in Los Angeles, we have almost a 50% dropout rate in our schools. That's in Los Angeles.
That's a crisis.
Yeah, it's a crisis. It's a crisis.
Let me see. We've been talking about, and this is our second segment on SAPA, but I want to focus a little bit on Billy Mitchell, the musician, the author. I have this book, and I thank you very much for signing it for me. I've had it for a little while. The Gigging Musician. How to get, play, and keep a gig. Keep the gig. Tell me what inspired this. And I know you've written in a lot of articles in various newspapers as well as a writer, but let me be quiet and let me understand and let our audience understand, what about the Gigging Musician?
Well, you know, writing is not my forte. Writing to me is not enjoyable. It started, I backed into it much the same as I backed into music. I used to write short articles for the jazz scene out here as a joke, just spoof, just commentaries on the jazz scene and about musicians, just as a joke. And several years ago, I got a call from a magazine in New York that had read some of these things and asked me to write a column. And at first, when I thought about it, because I hadn't had experience, I was afraid that there was no way I could write every month about a different issue. Well, I wrote for that magazine for about 6 years, every month. And when I finished, at the end of that period, I had a whole list of topics that I hadn't gotten to write about. So there's so many facets of the music and entertainment business that's similar just to life itself. Okay. The same rules that apply in business apply in the arts, apply in working, the personal relationships that you have to develop, the personal disciplines that you have to have in order to succeed. And so we took some of our more humorous articles, we put them together, and then I reached out and interviewed different people in the business on these various topics. And they put the book out. I have another one that's completed. They've had a change of ownership at this publisher, so okay. I have to find another publisher that might be interested.
Is there a title to the book?
No.
Okay.
It would be The Gigging Musician Part 2, hopefully.
Okay. So you're looking forward to some additional information. I just thought that to be such a connection from teaching and instructing music in terms of what you're doing at SAPA to the aspect of audition, to the aspect of the professional musician. The gigging musician, it says, get a job or get a position and stay in there. How to stay, how to play, how to audition, how to get in.
You know, we come out of our, it's a funny little dynamic here. We have young people that graduate from conservatories. They graduate from music schools. Have not a clue as to how to go out and get a job, let alone the things that it takes to sustain a job and sustain work. And I try to impress upon musicians now, you have an abundance of brilliant musicians. They're getting turned out every week. Hundreds of musicians are graduating from these. And there are more musicians now than there are venues. Okay. So it's become highly competitive. And I try to impress upon musicians that the times have changed. Just like the golden age of Hollywood, old theater, when you could be a Shakespearean actor. Well, there's very few of those now. You have to be able to do everything. You have to be able to do comedy. You have to do, a musician now has to be able to play everything and has to have a mindset that would allow them to be comfortable in any venue if they're going to be a working musician. But most importantly, I try to impress upon musicians that it's important to develop your social skills, because in business now, someone has to like you. They either have to like you, they have to like what you do, or they have to like what you do can do for them. Yes. But they have to like something. And so the age of the artist, the artists out there doing whatever and disrupting and disrespecting and all of that, that's a little passé now. Yes. You have to settle down and be aware of your environment, be aware of your public, be aware of your audience and people that you're doing business with, and be about your work.
Be about your work. Now, being about your work, you are a gigging musician.
I gig.
Yes. Now, so not only have you orchestrated and developed an excellent program, because this program is set up for perpetuity. I mean, it's to last and continue.
Yes.
You have several albums to CDs now out.
CDs. I still say albums.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but you see, this is a funny thing. This is a funny thing. I'm very slow to talk about my musicianship. I'm a self-taught musician. I taught myself how to play. I suffered the same dilemma that these young people suffer. I didn't want the discipline. I didn't want to sit down and practice. I understand. That's why I understand. But that is why I stress the importance of learning basic musicianship. I had 5 CDs out, the one which was on the Billboard charts, before I started taking music lessons. I know the problems associated with not being totally prepared and having a well-rounded musical background or arts background. I know it firsthand, and that's why I talk to the students as I do. One thing I've been able to do is use my working experience in the music business, into the music business. I've worked other jobs. I've taught school. I've been in sales and things like that. And I brought all those things into being a producer, putting music groups together and performing. But I've also realized that it's very important that you be conscious of your audience. Yes. I have a lot of great artists out here that just totally disregard the trends, the tastes of the moods of the venues that they're performing in. And all this has a bearing on their success as a working artist.
Now, in your expression of that, I've seen myself on stage. There's the audience, which we're to entertain, but the musicians are one-upsmanship on each other or playing for each other on stage as opposed to playing for the audience. What's that about?
Well, that's a tradition. That's a tradition that goes along with the development of jazz, because it used to be kind of a competitive thing. You know, jam sessions were called cut sessions. You know, it was a competitive thing. And years ago, in the earlier years, or in the bebop era, the audience did come out to hear music. It kind of went along with the times, revolutionary times, free thinking. But those times don't exist now. Those times do not exist. And a lot of the working opportunities that the average musician will have would be in a restaurant that has music. It caters to people from all over the world that aren't necessarily jazz aficionados.
Yes.
And so you have to figure out how to take your art and enjoy your art and make sure that they enjoy what you're doing also.
Enjoying what you're doing, and in a giving nature, you have the audience having the opportunity to enjoy it too, because there's an aspect of reading your audience while in performance. The whole nature of the business has changed. Yes.
It has changed, and we have to realize it, and we have to look for other things. We just have to look for other things. Each school that has developed was never accepted by the school that it was replacing.
Isn't that amazing?
It was never even accepted as jazz. I mean, Louis Armstrong never really accepted bebop.
Right.
As, you know, if it wasn't Dixieland.
Right.
When the free form came on, that wasn't really, you know.
Yeah.
When the fusion, that's not really jazz, no.
Right.
Now you have smooth jazz that at least keeps the word on the lips of a lot of people. That's not really jazz. So in a way, we work against ourselves.
Well, one thing about it in terms of working as a focused human being, putting together and developing SAPA, being a successful musician for many years, being able to myself enjoy jazz, have the opportunity to listen to you at home and work with you for many years. That's how we do it in the Jazz Zone, especially when it comes to talking about SAPA. And give me that acronym. SAPA is what?
SAPA is the Scholarship Audition Performance Preparatory Academy.
In the Zone. My name is Roscoe Lee Owens, and I am your host in the Jazz Zone. Enjoy life with God's blessings, and thank you again for tuning in to Jazz Zone. We'll see you soon.